Hello! To the Mun and back again. Uh, Here we go. I have been accused of stranding astronauts all over the solar system, which is true. So this video is me attempting to build a build a spaceship and whatever, do a mission to the Mun and back again. So a round trip mission where I don't strand anybody on the Mun. They're gonna fly to the Mun. They're gonna get land there. They're gonna get out, walk around, then they're gonna get back in their spaceship and fly back into orbit and come home again. I'm actually kind of emulating, sort of, the Apollo program. I'm making this harder on myself than it needs to be. You can see right here, I'm building the Nico lander, named after one of the two Dalmatians that I dog sat for just recently. And the Nico lander is going to be one spaceship. I'm going to put it in orbit. And then I'm going to build the Chase orbiter, which Chase is the name of the other little weenie dog that I recently dog sat. And I'm going to dock these two in orbit, and then the Chase orbiter is going to be the engines to push this whole contraption to the Mun. Then they're going to decouple, and the Nico lander here will land on the Mun and then take off from the Mun. Uh, when it'll land on the Mun, they'll get out, they'll walk around, they'll do science, and then they'll fly back up and take the Chase orbiter back home and land here on Kerbin with the Chase orbiter. So here I am testing the Nico lander before I put it in space, just to make sure that it can survive. See, bam! If its landing gear and everything can support landing in Kerbin's gravity, then I'm confident the thing can land on the Mooner gravity. Mooner gravity? A lot of times when I send spaceships to other planets, they land and the landing gear breaks or the ship topples over or I land in the ocean and the ship sinks. And for whatever reason, it's not able to take off again. So the Nico lander I tested here on Kerbin before sending it to the Mun to make sure that it structurally was sound and had a good chance of surviving the landing intact because I wanted to actually fly it again. Now there that was trying to send it into space. It didn't work. The rocket to send it into orbit exploded. And this happened a lot. This is me trying to send the Nico lander into orbit again. It didn't work. And this is another attempt. I'm using a program, a mod, that actually lets me rename the Kerbals, the astronauts. So one of the Kerbals is actually named Nico Kerman, and he, of course, is in the Nico lander. So I think that's kind of cool. Anyway, this might be the successful launch. You can see my land. I over-engineer everything. Like you can get to the Mun without sending up two separate spaceships and docking them together and doing all this hoopla. I think it's neat. And I mean, the lander doesn't need to be that big. The lander doesn't need to have that many fuel tanks and all this crud. I over-engineer everything, and it probably makes it harder on me than it really needs to be. But here we go. We're getting into orbit, and we're actually going to circularize, and then we'll worry about bringing up the Chase orbiter to connect. But see, this is working pretty well here. Just leveling off, trying to get enough sideways momentum. Oh, see, I transferred a little fuel from the lander into the gas tanks. In retrospect, that was dumb because after I finally run out of fuel and jettison the gas tanks, the lander is more efficient than those giant orange gas tanks were anyway, even though they had a bigger engine. So I should have just left that fuel in the lander. But the good thing about over-engineering everything is the lander had 5 gas tanks. So I dumped one gas tank into the orange tanks to fuel the bigger engine after it ran out of gas. But I still had 4 fuel tanks left of gas, which is more than I needed. It's surplus. And I guess that's the good thing about over-engineering everything is I have stuff left over. I have extras. I have spares a lot of the time, which, is good. So here I am just trying to get into a nice perfect orbit and try to get oriented in a way to make docking easier. There's my lander flying, and there we are looking out from the window inside the ship. That's what astronaut Nico sees. Beautiful shot of planet Kerbin through the window. I love looking at stuff through the actual windows of the spaceships. Now we need to build the Chase orbiter, which is going to actually push. um, and this is an important ship because this is what's going to bring the Nico lander all the way to the Mun and then deliver our brave astronauts back home again, which without accomplishing that, the whole mission is kind of pointless. And this is just me trying to build a thing. I used the Nico lander as a base and then tried to just modify the payload for the Chase orbiter. And here I am trying to affix. I'm. This looks nothing like the final design ended up looking like. I went through a lot of different iterations before I finally came up with a design that I liked. One of the problems was that I had initially imagined the Chase orbiter as being unmanned, and then I realized a couple of things. First of all, unmanned ships are harder to steer because I don't exactly know why, but the game is just programmed in a way where the unmanned probes don't have as much torque as a manned capsule does. So you have to add all these RCS jets and stuff in order to be able to push them around, and that means you have to carry more RCS fuel. And anyway, so it was just going to be a lot easier. And then I also realized, of course, that if the Chase orbiter is unmanned, then there are no seats for the crew of the Nico lander to fly home in, which means I would have to drag the Nico lander all the way back to Kerbin, which was not part of my original plan. So I go through all these iterations. Here's my first test flight of the Chase orbiter. Um, and everything looks okay, but of course, things never work right on the first try. Um, Look, everything's great. Oh my gosh, what could possibly go wrong? This is a brilliant rocket. I'm a great engineer. I'm a rocket scientist. Oh my goodness. Something has gone terribly awry. Who would have guessed? So what I finally ended up doing is the Chase orbiter ends up having a three-man module in it, but I use the mod that I use to name my astronauts to delete two of the pilots, or two of the astronauts from the pod. Look at that, another successful launch. Except that one of the rockets shot off like a missile, and then that happened. um, so yeah, here I am. The thing just falls apart on the launch bay before I even finish assigning the astronauts. But yeah, you can see in the lower right corner, if you're not distracted by the rocket exploding, that I have only one astronaut driving this. It is no longer unmanned. I every at the beginning of every launch, I delete two of the astronauts and make the third astronaut Chase Kerman. So I have Nico Kerman and Kirby Kerman in the lander. Those are the two astronauts that will walk on the Mun. And I have Chase Kerman in the Chase orbiter, piloting it. And he has two empty seats, which Nico and Kirby will sit in to fly back to planet Kerbin. So I think this is the one that actually works. You can see that this rocket has the large docking port on the front, and there's a large docking port on the Nico lander. And this guy's got a nuclear engine there. Not here, but in the final stage, it's got a nuclear engine, which will give me slow but efficient um, propulsion, such as to travel to the Mun. Um, not quickly, but efficiently. And so I think, yeah, this looks like it's working. And you can see little Chase Kerman in the bottom right there. There we go. That one got into orbit. So now docking Chase and Nico together. This is a maneuver that's altogether unnecessary if I had just gone to the Mun and back again in a single rocket ship, but I have to get fancy and over-engineer and make everything more complicated than it needs to be. So this guy is going to set up what they call a rendezvous. And yes, I'm using mechanical jeb to do the rendezvous because I'm not a rocket scientist and I'm not an astronaut. And you know what? I've done like 2 rendezvous completely by hand, and it's super frustrating and hard and a little bit boring. So I have a plugin, I have a mod, a third-party mod, Mechanical Jeb, and I just tell MechJeb to do it. And it autopilots the whole thing for me. It's better at it than I am, and by setting it up to do its own thing, I can play Fish Out of Water or Hero Academy, on my iPhone and not have to worry about making all these tedious course corrections. So, oh well, I know I do feel bad just using the autopilot, but oh well. Does it detract from my accomplishment? Am I less of a man because I use autopilot? I mean, yeah, probably. That's probably exactly right. But oh well. So we're getting lined up. This is just a matter of getting the chase orbiter close to the Nico lander. The rendezvous doesn't actually necessarily mean that they're physically going to be in contact. The rendezvous just means get them super close together. And then we'll have to perform a docking procedure. Look at that shot with the sun in the background. I get all artsy fartsy during these things. When I know I'm recording what I'm doing, I get especially artsy fartsy. But I've got over 1,000 screenshots of Kerbal Space Program as well, of me playing Kerbal Space Program as well, because I just think everything about this game is cool looking and beautiful and neat, and if I'm not recording it, I'm taking pictures of it because I just think everything's awesome. Here we go. There's the Nico lander. Autopilot has brought us right next to it. By the way, of course, everything in this video is 4 times accelerated. I've sped up the playback. It took me hours and hours and hours. I've cut out a lot of footage and I've accelerated all of the footage that you're watching. The game doesn't go this fast when I play it. I don't play this fast. The autopilot doesn't go this fast. So this is all, accelerated so that the video doesn't take you guys as long to watch as it did me to play. But there, so we've separated the actual orbiter from the engines after we used up the last of the fuel in the engines that took us into orbit and did the rendezvousing. And now we're docking. So now the Nico, see, and this is the Chase orbiter here with under its fairing, there's a nuclear engine there. This is actually a smaller ship than the lander, which seems strange. Um, and there's the giant docking port, and here we are just slowly maneuvering. It's way slower than this in real life. It's just trying to bring the two together. And the rendezvous and dockings are still the hardest things in the game for me. I don't know why I insist on every mission consisting of multiple pieces that I have to rendezvous and dock together in orbit, because it's so hard for me to do it. I should try to avoid it, but there's also something about it that is super awesome, I think. Look at these 2 spaceships slowly coming together. When you think about how big space is, the fact that these 2 tiny little things can touch like this is awesome. There they go. Now they're connected. The Nico lander and the Chase orbiter are connected together, and now we actually have Chase Kerman is in the Chase orbiter, and Nico Kerman and Kirby Kerman are still in the lander. They're going to stay in the lander until it's time to come back to Kerbin. So technically, these astronauts, even though their ships have connected to each other, are still just talking to each other like through the radio and maybe waving at each other through the windows because they're still not in the same physical room with each other. But that's okay. Chase Kerman is an expert pilot, and he's going to fly them to the Mun. At this point, Nico Kerman and Kirby Kerman, they're just sitting back enjoying the ride. Chase is doing all the work. Chase is the pilot, and they're just passengers. When they get to the Mun, it's going to be their turn to shine. They're going to do the landing, and that's going to be tricky and dangerous, but for now, they're just sitting back. Now, here's the problem with the nuclear engine. It takes so long to do this burn that I have to start burning the nuclear engine when it looks like I'm heading straight at the planet. It looks like I'm just going to fly the ship into the surface of Kerbin, but I'm not. Because the nuclear engine, while incredibly fuel efficient, provides very little thrust. So it's pushing the ship forward so slowly, or with so little oomph, that the planet, we actually rotate around past the planet before the engines push us into it. The planet gets out of our way, or we get out of the planet's way anyway, before the engines would push us into it. And so we're just going to whip around the edge of the planet Kerbin and shoot out towards the moon. This is the kind of ridiculous maneuver and dangerous and precision maneuver that Chase Kerman has been practicing and preparing for years. It's a tricky maneuver. Honestly, you don't need to use nuclear engines to get to the Mun. You can use the less efficient but much faster, more powerful engines to get to the Mun because it's so close. But all my missions lately are very far away, and so I'm just used to using the nuclear engines because they're more fuel efficient. You can't get to Joule without using nuclear engines because your more powerful engines when you're trying to go to Joule will very quickly run out of gas before they've actually put you on course to reach Joule. Um, what I'm doing most of the time these days is the flag project, which is my own goal to plant a flag on everything in the Kerbin Space Program game, as the game is right now in this version of the game, and it's still under development, so they will probably add more planets and moons later. But my flag project is just to try to land on everything that you can land on right now and plant a flag on it. And that means I'm flying to places I've never been before, and I'm sending astronauts there because you have to have an astronaut to plant the flag. And that means that I'm doing these very long trips to the moons of Joule and to Dres and Duna to plant flags. But all of these missions are just one-way missions. I'm not actually flying any of these Kerbals back home again. And that's what really prompted me to do this mission to the Mun. I've gone to the Mun a million times. I've landed on the Mun so often, it's boring, really. But technically, I had never put a flag on the Mun because the flags didn't come out until after I had moved past the Mun. All of my landings in the Mun were before the patch that had flags. So I thought, I need to put a flag on the Mun anyway. I might as well address the concern that all of my missions leave astronauts stranded on their destination. And, set myself a challenge. The Mun is in the backyard. I might as well try to do a round trip mission where I actually land, plant the flag, and then come back home. So that's what this is. This is taking something super simple like going to the Mun and making it way more complicated than it needs to be with all of the different ships docked in orbit and blah blah blah, and actually bringing them back home, which is unnecessary for the flag project. The mission parameters of the flag project are just put a flag on everything you can land on. It says nothing about anybody coming back home again, but it's a fun challenge. It's a fun challenge, and when you start thinking about missions in terms of being round trip, it adds a lot to the role playing value. It's like going to the moon was a round trip mission. We did not just leave our astronauts stranded there. So if I'm trying to like recreate the Apollo missions and stuff, bringing the astronauts back home should be part of the mission parameters. And especially for easy things like the Mun, it it's almost half-assing it to just leave them stranded there. And so anyway, this was a lot of fun. This was extremely enjoyable, flying to the Mun and back again because it made me feel more of a connection to my astronauts. It's like if I know I'm just going to leave them stranded on a planet a million miles away, I don't want to get attached. But Nico Kerman, Chase Kerman, and Kirby Kerman, I was able to form a bond, a brotherly connection with them because I knew I wasn't intentionally stranding them. I was actually going to bring them home, and that allowed us to form a friendship. That allowed us to form a connection that um, the astronauts I sacrifice, I can't connect with them as well. So anyway, it's also a much It would be better to not over-engineer everything from a role play standpoint, because when I make a mission that is much that has much larger rockets than they need to be, that is because in this game it's a sandbox and I have an unlimited amount of money, right? So I can build the biggest rockets I want to. It would be fun from a role play standpoint to go to the moon with as few parts, with as small a rocket as possible. Because if I was an actual space program, I would probably have budgetary constraints. Not only would a real space program insist on bringing the astronauts back home alive, a real space program would insist on not overspending. It would have a budget. So it might be a fun challenge for me to go to the Mun in the smallest rocket possible and also bring them back home alive, which, I mean, that just sounds silly. I'm building a small rocket and I'm bringing the astronauts back home alive. That's nonsense. No, that might be a fun challenge next. Maybe after I finish the flag project, I'll do that because that would be a fun challenge. Part of why I made this mission to the Mun as complicated as I did and recorded it and all this other stuff is just because I kind of needed a break from putting flags on everything in the game. It's really hard to fly out to Jewel and all of these places and put a flag there, and it's like I wanted to do something else. And so challenging myself to do this round trip mission was a nice break. There's the Mun. Poor Chase has no view. He has no window. But he's got all the instrumentation he needs. He can fly this by just looking at the nav ball and his radar and stuff. So here's the Mun. Chase has completed half of his challenge flying these guys to the Mun. Now he just needs to slow down the ship, decelerate into a stable orbit around the Mun, and then it's up to Nico and Kirby to actually land, while Chase will just stay in the orbiter and will orbit and float around the Mun. Maybe he'll take a nap. He'll get some rest while he waits for his comrades to fulfill their part of the mission. And here we see the nuclear engine. The nuclear engine takes a long time to accelerate you and get you going in the first place, and it also takes a long time to decelerate you when you finally reach your destination. If we didn't turn the ship around and burn the nuclear engine to decelerate, we would be going so fast that we would curve around the Mun as its gravity grabbed us, but we'd be going so fast we would escape the Mun's gravity and slingshot out and into who knows where. So this deceleration burn is extremely important. And there we go. Look at that, a nice circular orbit around the Mun. You can see I've got some satellites going around the Mun too. You can see their orbits here. One of them is a Kethane scanner. So here we are. We're in orbit around the Mun. It's time for Nico to separate from the Chase orbiter and land this baby, completing an essential part of the mission. So there we decouple. And of course, we can recouple again after we're done landing on the Mun. Fun fact, I landed on the Mun once before what you're watching right here. The first time I landed on the Mun, the recording program didn't work. So that whole landing did not get recorded. I was a very sad panda. And I had quick saved it after the landing. So I couldn't load up from before doing the landing to do it again. So I actually I turned on the unlimited fuel, flew back up, reconnected the ship, and then turned on the recorder and did the landing again. And I used the cheat program on the way down for unlimited fuel on the second landing because I figured I'd already used enough fuel the first time I landed that I didn't need to waste more fuel on a second landing when in reality you would never do that. We would not land on the moon a second time just because the camera broke the first time around. But it's a game, and so yeah. I did not use the fuel cheat at all during this mission, except during the second lunar landing, and that was only because of the camera breaking and to make up for that. So here we are, coming down for a landing. This is tricky. I'm doing the landing all by hand. I'm not. There is no mechanical jeb unit on the lander. It's only on the chase orbiter because I only wanted to use it for the flying to and from the Mun, not for the landing. And I didn't want to end up with two on the same ship. So landing by hand is tricky. You've got to keep your speed low enough that you don't crash into the ground, and you don't know exactly where the ground is because the altimeter you see on this screen is based on sea level, but of course the land is above sea level, so you can't tell. There I see my shadow now coming down slowly, and of course it was a lot slower in real time. This was accelerated, but we've landed successfully. Now for Mun walking, to get out and walk around on the Mun. In a real space program, you wouldn't fly all the way to the Mun and then stay in the ship and take off again immediately. You'd get out and mess around. You'd use your jetpacks. You'd walk on the surface. You'd collect rocks and soil samples. And you'd fall over a lot. And you'd get. Here we're trying to. Oh, I was trying to see if I could see him from inside the cockpit. But anyway, here's Nico Kerman jumping around on the surface of the Mun. You know, maybe I should have slowed down this part of the video because he looks kind of silly walking around on the Mun at 4 times at super speed. Because when you watch videos of the Mun, people walking on the Mun, they're going very slowly. But here I am planting my flag on the Mun, and then I'll pose for the picture. So this is kind of the whole reason I had to go to the Mun to plant the flag there for the flag project. And so this is an essential part of the mission. And as I get a picture of that flag, I have successfully complete. That was graceful. It just kind of falls out of the cockpit there. Well, I guess getting to the Mun probably took several days of him just sitting in that little tin can. So, maybe his legs were asleep. I shouldn't make fun of him. Here we go. The low gravity on the Mun is fun. Little Nico has a big smile on his face as he jumps up into the, is it still sky even though there's no atmosphere? Anyway, as he plays with his jetpack in the low gravity of the Mun, Nico has a big grin on his face because he is having a good time. And it no doubt feels good to get out and stretch his legs and fly around and be outside of that cramped little tin can for a while. Up, up, up. Clunkety clunk. Trying to get him on top of the lander. There we go. He's actually on the docking port now. In reality, it's probably not a good idea to step on that. You might break something, but oh well. Of course, it would be very easy to break any of these solar panels too. I've done that before, but these guys are experts. Nico and Kirby are expert astronauts. They're not gonna step on a solar panel and break something on accident. They're professionals. These are the best of the best. You know, these are the astronauts that are so awesome that I actually want them to come back home after this mission so they can do more. you know, these are the creme de la creme. Here I am getting all artsy with a slow zoom in from high orbit of the Mun, and my celebratory shot. This is the promotional. That's the promotional shot, right? That we send back home to say, please give the Kerbal space program more funding so that we can continue to explore outer space. Of course, since it's in sandbox mode, I have unlimited funding, like I already said. So, and now the journey home. Everything up to now is stuff I've done before. I've flown to the Mun before. I've docked ships together before. I've planted my flag before. Not on the Mun, but I've planted my flag on other places that were even harder to go to. This is the new challenging part, is actually flying home again. Oh, did I miss in the video? Oh, I missed in the video the part, oops, where they fly up to the spaceship and dock with it. Oops. Oh well, the video is long enough as it is. Anyway, they did lift off from the surface of the Mun. They flew the Nico lander up into orbit and docked with the Mun again. Oh, that's too bad. I did that entire docking by hand too. I was proud of that. Why didn't it get into the video? Dang it. It took me many, many hours to do this all. I recorded a lot of footage, and I guess I just lost the footage of flying back up to the Mun and flying back up to the Chase orbiter and docking. That's too bad. Anyway, so they're all in the orbiter together now. They after they flew up and docked with the Nico or with the Chase orbiter, we transferred all the leftover fuel out of the Nico lander into the orbiter, and then we ditched the lander. We left it behind, and the astronauts flew over into the Chase orbiter as well, and so the Nico lander was empty of fuel and astronauts and everything, and so then we decoupled it and we just left it behind. So now finally Nico and Chase and Kirby Kerman are all together again. They're well for the first time really. They're all together in this three-man pod. Because remember, we had deleted two of the astronauts from the three-man pod, so there would only be two, or there'd be two empty seats for Nico and Kirby. And here we are. We've flown back to Kerbin. We've deployed parachutes and separated everything except the little landing module here. There we are, decelerating. The parachutes have deployed successfully. After everything else, coming back home and landing went really fast. Honestly, after landing on the Mun, as long as you have enough fuel left, flying back to Kerbin and deploying your parachutes is not that hard. It's just a matter of landing without breaking your spaceship as you land, and it's a matter of having enough gas to fly back home. Since Kerbin has an atmosphere and you can land with parachutes, landing is so much easier with parachutes. Landing on the Mun is hard because there's no air, so parachutes don't work. Anyway, there are our brave astronauts, safe and sound on the planet Kerbin. Mission successful. Oh, I thought that was the end of the video. Oh, look, no, I'm doing another artsy zoom in shot. Okay. There's our three brave astronauts as the sun rises on planet Kerbin. They've gone to the Mun and back again. The end. Wait, no, it's not the end yet. I found the footage of us taking off from the surface of the Mun and docking with the Chase orbiter before flying back home. I could have inserted this video into the rest of it where it actually belongs, but inserting this there would have destroyed the audio track of my commentary, and I didn't know how to read, and I didn't want to redo the whole commentary track again, and I guess I was just lazy. So anyway, I've just slapped it on here at the end. But you can see we loaded our dudes up in the Nico lander, and we have taken off, and I timed it so that as we were taking off, the Chase orbiter would be passing overhead. And I think I did a reasonably good job. Remember, the Nico lander does not have mechanical jib, so all of this was done entirely by hand. Um, Most of the mission was done entirely by hand. Maybe if I go back and go to the Mun with the smallest rocket possible and go both ways, come back home again, maybe I will also do it without any mech jib. Because I won't have any rendezvousing or docking to do in that mission anyway, because I'm trying to build the small rocket, so that would be a challenge. Small rocket, returning home, no autopilot. That would be a test of my skills ores. But first I want to finish the flag project. And I'll post it probably. Well, I'll post all the pictures anyway. I'm not recording video for the flag project because it would just be way too much footage. But I am taking pictures. I'll post all the pictures somewhere to show you guys my accomplishment. So here is this is the Chase orbiter, which has been orbiting this whole time. And now that Nico and Kirby have accomplished their mission on the lunar surface, again, it's Chase's turn to shine as he maneuvers around the for a rendezvous, which is being done entirely. The rendezvousing is being done by MechJeb. Even though I tried to take off as the lander was, or as the orbiter was passing overhead, I wasn't able to get them in. I wasn't able to get them rendezvoused. I wasn't able to get them close enough together and synchronized to actually do a docking. So anyway, that's okay. That's Chase's job, and with the help of the MechJeb autopilot, he's done it famously. And now for the actual docking, uh, which I do entirely by hand. Or should I say, Nico does entirely by hand. Was it Nico or was it the which one am I actually driving during the docking? So the docking is still super hard, but I'll tell you the secret to docking is when you build your spaceship. You need to make sure this you find the center of mass and you put all of your RCS rockets or all your RCS ports at your center of mass and nowhere else. And that makes it so when you do the when you use the docking camera, docking mode, and you try to slide up and down, left and right, if your RCS thrusters are perfectly balanced, you won't tilt. You'll just slide up and down anyway. That's the trick. Docking matters less on your skill as it does on how you build the rocket in the. Well, I guess skill is still important too. But anyway, here we are. You can see MechJeb is turned off. I did this entirely myself. I'm very proud of this. There we go. Bam! Wait for the magnetic docking ports to connect, and there we go. We're hooked up again. And now, see how beautiful that is? Two ships connected. And now the first thing I do is I drain all of the fuel out of the lander. See, this is why the lander was over-engineered. The lander had more fuel in it than it ever needed. And that made the lander heavier than it needed to be. Anyway, so we took all the fuel out of the lander. And now we're taking the astronauts out. Here is Nico Kerman flying out of the lander and, having some fun floating around, using his jetpack to float around the ship. Maybe he's not having fun. Maybe he's doing a visual inspection of the craft to make sure that it's space-worthy before the journey home. Making sure that everything is in working order. Um, here I am assuming that he's just goofing off. That's that's preposterous. And here's Kirby Kerman. Kirby probably is goofing off. He's a slacker. That's why he was just Nico's co-pilot. Look at that. He bounced into the ship so hard he knocked his head and floated off. We almost lost him because of his own clumsiness and incompetence. Psh. Anyway, so there. And then we let go of the lander. There we go. And then the lander is empty of fuel and empty of people, and the batteries will eventually drain. And so we just leave it to float in space. We get a really good view of it, I think. Yeah, through the window. There is a nice shot of it. Here we go. I think it looks really cool looking at it from through the window. There it is as it's floating away. The lights will turn off when the batteries die eventually. I don't think it'll ever crash into the Mun. I think it'll just float around forever. And then we go fly back to Kerbin. Mission success.